Hey mates, welcome to the NRL Carry Podcast. I'm your host, Phoenix Trinidad, and if you're new here, this is Zero Tackle's weekly NRL podcast. And today, of course, this episode, we are talking about the two massive prelims and the upcoming Grand Final. We're joined by Darren, Parkin, Lee Addison, and Jamie Soward. And we're also doing a wash-up before the Eels, the Sea Eagles, and the Dolphins. So, pretty straightforward episode, massive one. Let's get straight into it. All right, so usual crew, it's a grand final preview, big week, so let's get straight into it. Darren, Parkin, straight off the bat, how are you, mate?
Going well, yeah. What a week. Stories everywhere. Storm, 11 in 23 years now, and Penrith's era was almost defined most by what they did against the Broncos a couple of years ago in that grand final, so it's kind of fitting that Brisbane come from behind spectacularly to stop that and sets us up with a terrific contest next week.
Absolutely. Lee Addison from Brisbane. Did you get to the party or what?
Mate, I'm an athlete. I don't do things like that. But do you like this Brisbane accent too? Lee Addison from Brisbane. But whoever win, interesting thing this weekend, whichever team win the grand final this weekend, both coaches, Tim Sheen's protégés, and I'll be doing something on zerotackle.com this week about how many coaches have influenced grand final wins over the last 3-4 decades, which will be quite interesting.
Quite interesting indeed, and always quite interesting to have Jamie Soward on the podcast. Hello, mate.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. I'm just here for Lee. I'm just here to be his punching bag.
All right. Well, let's get into that then. All right. Let's go back to Friday night, first game. Darren, you've got the honours. Your Storm 22 up on the Sharks. Probably not a huge surprise, but they're just a very professional team.
Yeah, they are. Look, the Sharks had a very good final series. It didn't do a million things wrong in this game necessarily either, but the Storm, just the class of, their returning players, Pappenhausen from concussion. There was that little scare when he got crunched in the shoulder, I think midway through the second half. Obviously, Jerome Hughes was amazing. Tukumanu's first half in particular, obviously pushing on from the qualifying final. And even though it was tight most of the way through, the Storm were only 4 to 6 points in front for a fair chunk of the game until they probably sealed it with 5 minutes to go. It always felt, Jamie, like they were keeping them at arm's length, and it's easy to say in retrospect because you're nervous watching it, but it felt like they were going to win most of the night.
Yeah, I think some of those moments that you spoke about, Jerome Hughes, Ryan Pappenhausen, two big-name players for that side, and we haven't really seen what Melbourne's top gear is this year. But you sort of got a glimpse of it the other night. I think that the Cronulla Sharks, they've seemed to got to this point a couple of times now and just fallen short. But I think this has probably been their best campaign in doing it, where you actually thought that they were probably a genuine chance of winning the competition. So unfortunately for them, they go back to the drawing board. But you're right about Melbourne. They've been here before, and they were able to get themselves into a position to be able to just keep them at arm's length for most of the night.
My overriding memory of the Sharks from the game on Friday was how good their defence was for so much of the game. I know in the first half they got breached at the 3-in and 4-in defender each side, but they fixed that in the second half, and one of the memories I have of the game is them doing so much defending on their goal line and so much defending for more than one set because of 6 agains and penalties. I promised I wouldn't mention the 18 penalties, but hello. And it was clear that Fitzgibbon really tightened the defensive nuts and bolts in the last few weeks, and I think that was really evident with the amount of goal line defence that they had to do. I thought the scramble was excellent, and I just think I'd love us to have a conversation, boys, around what you think was the difference between the two sides. Was it literally the strike ability of Munster and Hughes and Grant, or was it more the forwards and somebody like Stefano getting over the top of some of the Cronulla forwards, or was it a bit of column A and column B?
No, I think it was twofold. I think that the Melbourne Storm star players came up with little moments and turned them into big moments. You know, the Jerome Hughes try was an offload, opportunistic piece of play, and then Cameron Munster kick inside for Ryan Pappenhausen. I actually thought what hurt the Sharks, I'm with you, Lee. They wanted ball in play. They've been a super fit side. I thought for Ash Klein to come out and have 18 penalties in a prelim final is just ridiculous. We got to a point where, you know, that 22 minutes in play, like Craig Fitzgibbons, you saw that frustration because he wanted ball in play. That's how they've won their 2 games. It's ball in play, absorb the pressure, and then go down there and try and break the hearts of the other side. They never really got into that flow the other night on either side. So that's why I think what Darren said at the start was it was like a title fight, but we sort of just jabbed a lot instead of there was no real big punches thrown. It was sort of just kept at each other's at arm's length. But I thought the 18 penalties, I'm with you, Lee. I thought it was just ridiculous.
There's 2 more things I want to add to. I don't think Nicho Hynes had an awful game, yet if you read some of the mainstream media, he failed at certain stages or whatnot. I think, again, I mean, one of the things about the Cronulla evolution, if you like, under Craig Fitzgibbon, they've been getting better each year, incrementally. Nicho Hynes is getting better at what he did. He just overplayed the long ball close to the line a little bit too much, and obviously he dropped a cold ball a bit later. But I thought some of the pile-on around Nicho well out of order. And I guess the other thing I want to bring up again is what a coach Melbourne Storm have got. What a coach. And the 11 grand finals in 23 seasons, and I think it's also, Darren, 22 final series in 23 years. Now, that is just unheard of, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And even, you know, culturally to overcome what they had to overcome 15 years ago, self-inflicted clearly, but, you know, that obviously took a fair hit in terms of the playing group and the way they handled that year, and then obviously the leadership required to keep pushing forward to bounce back in the manner that they did. I mean, you look at the last 2 sides to lose to Penrith in grand finals obviously come up against it here. It took the Broncos a while to recover. As we know, last year was a battle. But for the Storm, you know, straight back to work and they get where they are now. And I'm curious also, Lee, before we move on to, I agree with Jamie that I thought the Sharks, that was probably the best they've looked in finals of recent times. If you put this year next to last year, that they've got to a prelim, they've lost the prelim probably in a similar fashion to the way they lost last year's, where they weren't too bad. They just came up against a side that probably a little bit more experienced and had a few more match winners. But do you feel it's a step forward, or are they still, you know, maybe one player short of being a genuine contender?
Preliminary finals are as such because any of the 4 teams in the competition can clearly look at being premiership winners. Okay, very rarely is there a blowout in a preliminary final. I think there was a couple of years ago. Brisbane and the Warriors is one that springs to mind. And so if you lose a prelim or win a prelim, it's sometimes the most minuscule difference. Sometimes, and you tend to look back at moments throughout the game. I think the Sharks are only going to benefit from this. There again, there's a narrative. Do they have enough class? This, that, and the other. But what the Sharks have clearly done is decided they're building incrementally. They've got faith on the people they've got within their 4 walls, and I think they've had a better season. I feel like it's progress, don't you, Jamie?
Yeah. I agree. I think that there's not much room to move in their cap at the moment. They've got some decisions making that they've got to make, Phoenix. But all in all, I think the Sharks, if you had said 2 months ago they were going to get into a prelim and be right there or thereabouts, they would have taken that.
Yeah. Before we move on to the Broncos and the Panthers, I just wanted to ask you, Sowie, because I'm still just in awe of Jerome Hughes and playing through what looks like a nasty enough injury to his arm. Like, I think it's fractured or something, and he's playing with that cast. What was the hardest injury you've had to play through? And like thinking about what Jerome Hughes is going through now, like, is he even registering that, or is he like, does it even register that you're in pain throughout that game?
No. Once you decide to put the boots on, you know, I'm sure if it was broken, then there'd be some padding but he'd be still getting needled, I'd be assuming.
Yeah.
Time of the year, it's all in. If they had any reservations, they would have tested it out of training to a certain extent. For me, I think probably my hardest one, and kickers would understand, is like losing feeling down the left side of my leg in 2015 and being a kicker and having to sort of needle that. That was probably the hardest thing for me. So, but yeah, what Jerome means to that side, we've seen performances like that over the last couple of years. The Sam Burgess one, the Cooper Cronk one. Like, you don't really think about it once you're out there. It's more about getting it done. Especially if you're needled, you're able to, go through that pain.
It was so funny seeing Cronulla try to get to Jerome Hughes too in the defensive line, and they did such a good job of hiding him in the defensive line too. I thought it was a really telling moment in the first half. You could see Cronulla looking for him, and they just couldn't get there.
Yeah, it was unreal. Again, just in awe of the Storm and Jerome Hughes in particular. So let's go now to last night. Just an unbelievable one, Sowie. So the Panthers, their dynasty comes to an end in dramatic fashion. And by 2 points at the hands of the Broncos. Go on.
Can we get rid of this bullshit thing about the dynasty being over?
Well, the streak's over.
Then say the streak.
He's a big
mainstream media. Mainstream media has gone into a meltdown that the dynasty's over. Is Nathan Cleary retiring? Is Isaiah Yeo retiring? Is Dylan Edwards retiring? Is Ivan Cleary walking away? Because I think we're in the middle of it. I think we are in the middle of it. If you tell me in 5 years' time that the Penrith Panthers have won another 2 titles, I'm not going to be surprised at all. This whole narrative that the dynasty's over, like, it's just beginning, because they were last after round 12 and they made a prelim and they almost nearly made a grand final. And if they went to the grand final next week, I reckon that they'd probably start near close to favourites after what they did last year. So the whole people don't know what the dynasty thing is rubbish to me. A dynasty, would the Golden State Warriors, are they considered a dynasty?
They are.
They went back to back once.
I think
Penrith have done it 4 times.
I mean, again, they were a B's appendage from getting to the grand final. So I think again we must acknowledge how good they've done things this year to get from that wooden spoon position to now. In terms of this dynasty or streak thing, I do think if you look deeper down the competitions, there was a little bit of a dip post Phil Gould in terms of the results in juniors, etc. So it will be interesting to see what the next 3, 4 years, 5 years unfold. Sorry. In terms of yesterday's game, Nathan Cleary made an interesting point. He said after the game that he felt that one of the things that caused them to lose was their ability to save tries, because that is something that they've been so good at. And I therefore pose the question once again, can you win the NRL Premiership from outside the top 4, Darren?
Well, yeah, the statistical evidence is mounting, but I mean, as you say, they were a B's appendage away. So I always look at things like that saying, well, could they have won that match? Absolutely. So therefore, I mean, yes, they had to travel up a harder road than they have in previous years, but, it'd be a different conversation. I mean, there's so many moments in this final series where we'd be having a different conversation. What if Canberra beat Brisbane in that first game when they probably should have? What does that look like? If Penrith hang on last night, what does that look like? Those sorts of things. It's fascinating, but I wanted to give credit to Brisbane and also ask Sowie about mindset so they were down and out in their first final, won, down and out in the prelim, win. And I look at their psychology where they get they had a grand final there for the taking 2 years ago, lost. It looked like it hurt them. Obviously, last year the wheels fell off a bit. They sack a coach. They bounce back this year. They climb all the way into the top four. They get to a prelim. They play it at home against the side that hurt them in that grand final. They're 14-0 down. I think the live markets had Penrith at $1.08 or something like that. So they're basically staring at that same enemy, and they overcome them. So second time in the finals they've done that. I always get the feeling that sides start to feel mentally almost like they're bulletproof, thinking, we got out of that, we can't be stopped, and therefore they ride the wave all the way through once you get out of jail like that.
Fraught with danger, if you ask me. I think the Canberra win was 15 minutes of brilliance. They had to have a lot of things go their way. I think the difference yesterday was they had 40 minutes to chase it, and they just finished as stronger. I think there's two different ways to look at that. They won't be able to do that to Melbourne next week. I think next year, this year's proven that, yeah, you can chase points and momentum, and I get all that. But what we also saw yesterday was it wasn't 29-28. It was 14. It was tight. It was nitty-gritty. So, I think that, yes, you can ride that wave, but it's fraught with danger because there's only so many times you can sit in the dressing room, look at each other and go, oh, we can do it. And then they still had to have a few things go right yesterday. I thought Penrith second half they looked tired. They looked really tired, and they were winning 14-0. So it's going to be a different story this week.
I don't think both attacks, Darren, clicked at all yesterday. Quite frankly, I remember watching the game and thinking Adam Reynolds was going to control things a little bit more, but he just seemed a little bit slow mentally in the game compared to what he normally is. The Panthers also didn't really click. Both teams were very good at controlling the go forward, I thought. It's just that Penrith did it almost immaculately in the first half. Broncos could not get their nose through at all. You may remember a period where there were 4 or 5 sets where they couldn't get past the 30 metres and they were kicking from deep. But, like Sowie said, they got very tired in the second half, and just a little edge to their game dropped off. Brisbane started to get their noses through. I think Brisbane actually made the first line break of the game, I think, from memory, and you could just tell it wasn't over. But even if you think about some of the Broncos' tries, I mean, one try was a kick that was deflected off the inside of a Penrith player's calf. I think it was Azaio. It deflected, and it was lucky for the Broncos in that regard. Reece Walsh's pass on the right didn't go where it intended, but luckily they had the smarts to deal with it. So it definitely didn't click. And Broncos have relied a lot all year on go-forward momentum and playing on the back of that. And if there's one team, Sowie, that can control somebody's rucks, they're going to be playing them in the grand final next week, aren't they?
Totally agree.
Yeah. Just one last one for Sowie. So we talked about moments in finals, and I think that Adam Reynolds' kick, what would be going through his head? Like, he spoke about it a lot, especially with his history. But I think you could see on his face, like, he did have that ability to just shut out all the noise. And, like, shout out to the Brisbane crowd. They were incredible at Suncorp. They were so loud. But what is actually going through your head when you're taking a huge pressure kick like that, especially taking the kicking duties off Reece Walsh after he hit the post, earlier in the game?
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't goal kick to start with. That could have been a really big sort of blunder. I think that he'll goal kick this week. When he lined it up and took it, there's a sense of calmness, but he's been there before. He's been there so many times. I think it was the other side of the field he missed when South lost to that grand final, the same end. So it's a different pressure. I think if it was the other way and Nathan had to kick that, then you would have seen the pressure amplified. But he's got such a smooth stroke. He's the second greatest point scorer of all time. He'll give that top one a nudge if he continues to play on. So his whole preparation and everything that he's done before, I think once he took the ball, he wouldn't have thought about his handling or anything at all. It would have been just moved through the ball, and he struck it sweetly.
What can you remember from your career, Sowie, where you had a similar kick in similar circumstances?
I used to actually, my stepdad, when I was practicing to be a goal kicker, used to stand behind me and blow a whistle.
Okay.
And the first time he did that, I shanked it from near in front. Blew up at him and he said, well, what are you going to do when people blow whistles or yell at you or anything like that? So my biggest kicks, I actually used to try and picture him with the whistle behind me and wait for that whistle and try and drown everything else out.
There you go. And do you remember a game where you did what Adam Reynolds did yesterday?
There was a couple. So the 2011 semi-final against Brisbane to go to Golden Point. 2009 beat Melbourne round 1 to go to Golden Point. Roosters 2014, that one from the sideline to put us level. So yeah, it's certainly something that you practice for. But I think, rather than thinking about the moment, you're trying to get to your process as quick as possible.
I kicked 9 from 10 for Folly Lane under 15s in 1994.
All in front?
No. I nailed some from the side. I did shank one from right in front, though. That's why it was 9 out of 10. So, yeah. So the pressure got to me.
Love it. Yeah, you can't emulate that. So we'll take a little break from the prelims before we get into the grand final. We'll do a couple of wash-ups for starting with the Eels. We'll go to you, Lee. So this year, what did they get right? What did they get wrong? Pass or fail? Yeah.
I think it ended up being a pass, but I always think when teams rack up some wins in the second half of the season, particularly when the finals pressure is off, there always needs to be a little asterisk next to that, and let's see what they come up with next year. I also think that they got rid of an awful lot of experience in the side, and I do think every strong side needs some experience if they want to make the finals or get in the prelims or whatever it may be. But I think they're heading on a journey, and they're confident in that journey, and they should be confident in that journey, so I'm awarding a pass. Darren.
Yeah, they were almost the first team dead on the season. I guess them and the Titans, I think they lost 8 of their first 10, or they certainly lost their first 4, and then obviously came home with a much more impressive run. And I know we said that the pressure's off a little bit at that stage, but underlines the importance that Moses possesses. I think they won 7 of the 13 games that he played, and only won 3 others when he didn't, or something like that. So, but yeah, they looked like they were starting to get a bit of flow happening, Jamie, towards the end of the season, and they've ended up finishing about 3 games out of the finals with their best player missing half a season. So that they looked like there's something to build on there.
Yeah, pass for me. I think when you lose your star playmaker and your captain at the start of the year, it always puts pressure on other people. And being a new coach, Jason Ryle was implementing new systems and styles. So they get Jack DeBella next year. They'll tinker with their roster. They look like the next couple of years they're going to have some money to spend in the salary cap. So pass for me.
Darren, the same to you for Sea Eagles. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? Pass or fail?
Definitely not a pass. Obviously, they showed some signs through the season that they were capable, but just far too inconsistent. Obviously, the DCE news when it came out in March or early in the year seemed to destabilise them. They lost something like 4 of their next 5 immediately after that. Obviously, Anthony Seibold enters the season under a fair degree of pressure. But yeah, to go from a side that played finals and was anticipated as being someone that might be able to challenge up and, get themselves, sneaking towards the top 4 to miss the finals in the manner that they did. Won their last 3, scored 100 points or something in that run, which would have frustrated their fans even more. But Lee, they were probably their own worst enemy. Injuries didn't help, but they left a bit on the table, unfortunately.
Big year 2026 for Manly. A lot of noise coming out of the club for reasons that we've discussed before. A roster that should have been in the finals, a halfback that has been very, very good for a long time, captained his state to state of origin victories and whatnot. All the way that was handled off the field, I believe the same thing may be happening with Tommy Trbojevic. There's something not right there. The place is leaking like a sieve to the media, Sowie, and there's so much noise about whether players like the coach, don't like the coach, don't like this, don't like that. Too much to be successful.
Yeah, the old saying that administrators administrate, coaches coach, players play. It doesn't seem like that's happening at Manly at the moment. Everyone's got their finger in the pie, and yeah, I'm with you. I think that the distractions, DCA making that decision at the start of the year shouldn't really change anything. It's a decision that he made, but I think everyone that knows the story behind the scenes is annoyed by that stuff. So you're right. The trouble off the field and administration at the moment is a problem for Manly.
Yep. And we'll stick with you, Sowie, just for the Dolphins. Could put some points on the board. Came close to making finals, but is this a pass or a fail?
Huge pass for me. I think that they've got an identity. They know how they want to attack. This year, their defence wasn't up to scratch, and that's what's cost them at the back end of the year in some of those games. So I think once they get Legler, Gilbert back, line next year, probably going to be one of the top 5 backlines in the competition. So it's going to be enjoyable to watch the second, I guess, ownership year of Isaiah Cartola and how he gets around the field now, because teams are going to start doing video on him. But huge pass for me, Dolphins.
Yeah, I think definite pass as well, Lee. They highest scoring team in the competition. They'd probably be a little bit annoyed that they didn't play finals. However, I think coming post Bennett, coaching change, still a young group, they nailed that part of their game. Some obvious improvements defensively that can be reached. But yeah, I think they're tracking the right way to be a very difficult side to beat over the next few years.
Similar to Cronulla in that regard, just incrementally building year on year. So it was an improvement this year on last year, which was an improvement on the year before. I think the biggest achievement was the post-Bennett era, which hasn't gone well for some clubs over the last few years for whatever reason. So I think there's only positivity around the Dolphins, and I'm sure they got some more new fans with the brand of football they played. And yes, defensively they need to tighten the nuts and bolts there. Just a great addition to the NRL Phoenix, I think.
Absolutely. Alrighty, let's get to it. This is what it's all about. The grand final. We'll stick with you, Lee. Where do you want to start with this one? What's the biggest talking point coming into this one?
Well, I actually felt as the final hooter went last year, I thought that the grand final last year was a game the Melbourne Storm needed to play on their journey. They just looked like they didn't have the same big game experience last year than the Penrith Panthers. And I thought they'd be better for the experience. And I just felt then that there was going to be every chance that they were going to be successful this year. Now, if you track back our comments all year, there's been something very unstorm-like about them. And so many of us have been struggling to put our finger on the reasons why. All of a sudden, they look very much like the Melbourne Storm in the 2 finals games, in particular the one on Friday. The way they controlled the ruck, the way they defended, the way they targeted the opposition, the way their big players stepped up and played 30% with 30% more intensity than they normally do or have done throughout the year. It just felt like the Melbourne Storm were back for me, Sowie.
I agree. I think that this week, I just hope a lot's not made about this 2-day rest, but it's such an advantage to have. Yeah. And we spoke about it. And Melbourne, like this morning, Brisbane are probably getting tickets sorted and all that kind of stuff. Like, it honestly is a really big week, and that's why I've been an advocate for this week should be All-Star Week or New South Wales Cup final or whatever you want to do, and just have the grand final as the grand final. But I think for the Melbourne Storm, you're right, Lee, you touched on some points there. Their big name players, looked like the Melbourne Storm had arrived. I think that the other part of that is Stefano Tuikamanu. Like he's the leader in that pack now. And you look at Brisbane, we know that Payne Haas coming back in. Pat Carrigan's going to be a huge in for that, because they did that yesterday without Pat Carrigan. So you talk about the first half not breaking the line back. How does that look now with Paddy Carrigan back in the side, it's got all the makings to be an absolute classic. Last time these two teams met, I think, was in 06, so it's going to be very interesting to see how both teams start and tactically how Brisbane go about it. Do they keep Mam on the bench or do they start him at 6?
Yeah, met in every final series between 06 and 09, 2 grand finals in that run as well, winning one each. But it's interesting, Lee, we spoke to Chad Townsend a week or so ago in regards to how you would use that prep, and his theory was if you're getting 7 days, that's enough. Like 7 versus 9 is okay. 6v8, 5v7 obviously becomes more of an issue. But he also said that you could turn it into a positive in the sense that the Broncos are played in a very similar time slot where it was you prepped for the preliminary final in terms of what your week looks like, what your day looks like, is very similar to the grand final, whereas obviously the Storm, yes, they had the benefit of that, but, you know, the extra weekend, how do they sort of manage that? Like, it's not going to hurt Melbourne, but if you're Brisbane, can you look at it and say our routine can nearly be identical to what it was last week?
Yeah, Madge Maguire won't have the spew buckets out this week, that's for sure. Remember, we were told his training was too tough, and I think all year I've been saying that the Broncos probably don't defend tough enough. Well, they did yesterday, and I think they can get a lot of confidence from that, and Sowie will tell you this, players would rather play. They'd want to play. So if they put them in ice this week, if they really look after their bodies, they can take the confidence from the games that they've won in the last couple of weeks and all that thought we were discussing earlier about the fact that they're never beaten. They need to get more go forward this week. They need to get more football into them, and I think they can only do that if they've got energy in the tank. And they will need to recover some over the next couple of days. Again, on to Sowie's point, this morning they're going to be receiving calls from family members and friends. They'll have more friends than ever today. Can you get us tickets for this? Can you get us this? Can you get us that? And that's a concern. However, if you look at the Broncos this year, when they have been on these short turnarounds, they've got quite a good record. One game that sticks out to me, even though it was the other end of the season, they went to New Zealand on the Saturday, lost, and then beat the Bulldogs very heavily on the Thursday, which really should be an impossible turnaround and advantage. So I think they've got a very experienced coach, a Premiership winner before on both sides of the world. He will know exactly how to deal with this. The Broncos also have the added advantage, boys. They've been here before. They've been in a grand final before, and these young players that have grown up together and played together and stayed together have got, this is not their first barbecue. So I don't think we'll see Reece Walsh in, was it sunglasses and whatever he was doing last time, whatever he did. I don't think we'll see anything like that. I think they'll keep their heads down and they'll be ready next week. They will be ready next week. Because the other thing, Sowie, I'd love your thoughts on this. I thought Melbourne Storm looked tired in the last half an hour of the game too. Some of their decision making, some of their decisions, particularly in the good ball areas when they were trying to attack Cronulla, they looked like a tired team. And Melbourne have also been given off this whiff over the last few weeks of their players struggling to get through to the end of the season. So I don't think everything in Melbourne is completely hunky-dory in that sense.
Yes and no. I think that, back to Darren's point, and totally get where Chad's coming from, but Melbourne woke up Saturday morning, organised tickets, organised flights, did their recovery, did everything that they needed to do. Sunday morning, they probably had a training run. That's the advantage. It's not the training that is the week that's tiring. It's the grand final breakfast. It's the media appearances. It's all that kind of stuff that you come and you've got to come to Sydney. Now, 2 teams are coming to Sydney. They'll probably have to be here Wednesday or Thursday. So the short turnaround turns into a 3-day stay. Last time the Broncos had a 3-day stay in Sydney, they got belted down here by South Sydney. They went on the harbour cruise. We all remember that. So I think that, look, it's going to be a great grand final. But at the end of the day, the 2 best teams have won their way there, regardless of what you think. You have to beat everyone to win it. But Melbourne, I think they look more settled in what they want to do. Brisbane riding this wave of emotion. Be interested to see what the crowd makeup is, whether it's Brisbane or Melbourne, and how many neutrals are there cheering for Brisbane or Melbourne as well. I think that's going to play a part.
Yeah, so there's a couple of... So in terms of the grand final week, we asked Chad this as well, but Sowie, what would be your advice to the players that are experiencing this week for the first time? Because it is, hectic, like you just said.
Hey, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy getting up and going to a grand final breakfast at 7 o'clock. Like, I get the sponsors and all that kind of stuff, but, like, at the end of the day, you want the best product. I think you want to enjoy it, but I think at the end of the day, it's when training's training, you got to switch on, and when you're not training, you've got to be able to switch off and probably not get too caught up in all the appearances and the photos and all that kind of stuff, because when you take that first team photo, I saw Melbourne this morning take that first team photo with the trophy, and that's when it gets real. So you got to remember, yes, you want to be switching off at the right time, but it all matters Sunday night, getting ready to go at whatever time kickoff is.
The question we also asked, Chad, was, do you try, you try to keep it normal, but everybody knows that it isn't. So is it a case of you need to embrace the fact that, we may never do this again? There are plenty of players that have played as many games as me that have never done this. You never know what next year looks like. You'll probably never play together again. I think that's the stat, that grand final teams are never identical the following season. Is there that moment where it's like, boys, you've got to soak in how special this actually is without riding that cloud too much?
Well, you know that it's not like another normal, like everyone says you could try and treat it like another game. It's not. It's a grand final. I remember the morning of, we were supposed to go for a walk, and this is one of our famous stories, a team walk. We were staying at the Swiss Grand at Bondi, and it was raining, so we decided to sit in a circle and have a bit of a yarn. And we ended up playing Chinese whispers around the group, which some of the stuff that came out of that can't repeat obviously on social media. But I think the thing, you're going to get the temperament for the coaches. It's right to say that players have been there before, but Madge hasn't been there since 2014. A totally different side where he had an expert group of senior players, and it was their time to win. Craig Bellamy's done this before, and the evolution of Craig and how he's been able to, through COVID, talk about managing players and understanding players a little bit more. So, Melbourne were there last year, and Brisbane, the last time they were in a grand final, they probably should have won it. So, you're trying to keep it, your routine, I think, stays normal. I think Chad would say that your routine stays as normal, as close to normal, but everything else around that, you probably try and not focus on it too much on game day.
Yeah. Excellent. So we'll finish up with some predictions. We'll go around the table. Lee Addison, where do you see this game being won and lost? Who's your winner?
I think the game will be won and lost, unfortunately, on the turnaround. I really do fear that. And I think Broncos are going to put up a great effort. There will be flashes of brilliance that trouble the Storm. However, I think the Storm will come home with a wet sail in the last 20 minutes or so, because their ability to control games from go to woe, I think it will pay dividends. What's up with you?
So your last part answer was how good Brisbane have done this turnaround, and they went to New Zealand and then they came back and beat the Bulldogs. And then your prediction is, I think it's going to hurt them.
I do, yeah. Because I listened to you about grand final week.
Yeah,
I do listen to you, Jamie.
I know. I'm in trouble when you call me Jamie. When you call me Soward, when we're on the same page.
I think from a coach's perspective, and I think, right, what could they hang the hat on, and the things I discussed are the things they can hang the hat on. They've done so well in short turnarounds. That said, I just think it might just be too much. It might be too much. It might be one step too far. This isn't playing the Bulldogs in round 5. This is a grand final against a machine that has been involved in several, and a coach that's been involved in several. So I just think that's going to tell. But I think Broncos are going to put one hell of a fight up. So I'm going to say Melbourne by 14.
Yeah, I think the self-belief in Brisbane is extremely high based on the way they've been able to do it in the last couple of games. A little bit of head, a little bit of heart in the prediction, though, that I think Melbourne have been through their 2 finals a little bit more bomb-proof, a little bit more perhaps consistent or trustworthy maybe in the way they've sort of put that out. Obviously, they're pretty much at full strength. Obviously, Safa Solomona 2 years in a row missing a grand final with suspension. But other than that, I think they're, it's the best they've looked. And the Broncos probably couldn't afford Soward to have the lapses that they've had in the last 2 games.
No, I think both teams have got strengths and weaknesses. I think that there'll be some sort of grand final drama throughout the week, which may affect predictions. But, if you're the Brisbane Broncos, you saw a blueprint in that second half yesterday of how you can win the grand final, and probably in the first half, too many errors and how you can lose a grand final. For Melbourne, I thought defensively, they need to be alive and on early. Penrith did a really good job yesterday of restricting meters and stuff like that. So both teams got their strengths and weaknesses. I think it's going to be a classic. I don't know. I'm going to tip yet. Probably going to save it for later in the week.
There's also already been a drama, a grand final week drama, fresh off the press. Teddy Swims, the pre-match entertainment, has cancelled 2 shows in Honolulu. So he's got to fly from Hawaii to Sydney, which I've done that flight before, and it's quite tough. And he's then got to perform at the weekend. I don't know if the turnaround will be big enough for him. He might have to fly to Brisbane to get to do the same thing that they're doing. But yeah, Teddy Swims is a doubt for the grand final.
Well, Snoop Dogg's still in the country. He was just at the AFL Grand Final. They'd be perfect for the NRL as well.
Yeah.
I think he'd be perfect too, Phoenix. I'm with you. I think the AFL love the fact that they got Snoop Dogg. Teddy, I just don't know what song he's going to do that's going to get the crowd going.
No.
For the NRL?
Yeah.
I reckon there's Teddy. Oh, yeah. I only really know the one song, so I don't know.
We all know the one song.
What's Kylie Minogue up to? Can't we get her?
Well, there's always some reliables like Jessica Mauboy and
who was also at the grand final, the AFL grand final. So she's in the country.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do like the idea of just having Australian artists, but you get what you're given, and hopefully Teddy Swims makes it in time. All right, that is our wrap up. So thanks, gentlemen. It's been an excellent year. I don't know what is going to happen, but it is Monday as we're recording this, so hopefully it's a good game. It'll be a cracker. Where can the people find you? Let's start with you, Darren.
We'll be continuing to do some top 5 November targets for the majority of sides, obviously those that have wrapped up their seasons, and continuing to put some of that stuff together. So obviously 15 teams thinking about list management, so we'll join them in that.
Absolutely. Lee Addison, a rugby league coach.
Yeah, rugby league coach on socials. I've secured Ryan Hoffman to come on the Kangaroo Tour. So
love it.
Storm Warriors, Wigan Warriors, New South Wales and Australia ex-player, and very good player too. And so if people want to come and join me and Ryan, then go to rugbyleaguecoach.com.au or look at Rugby League Coach on socials.
Jamie Soward, invites open.
I politely declined. I'm actually coaching Betu Samoa, so I'm getting ready to go into that camp. Pack camp starts in 2 weeks, which is hard to believe that there's more footy around, but there is plenty of footy coming up. And then Take the 2 podcast with Rugby League Guru. Thursday, massive grand final preview ahead of what's going to be an absolute classic.
Are the ladies playing on the same venues and days as the men?
Yeah, so October 19th in New Zealand is Samoa v Tonga. Big part of Samoa v New Zealand. We played before that. We played the Kiwi Ferns. And then a week later in Brisbane, it is Tonga v Samoa in the in the men's, and the ladies is Samoa v Kilroos. So a couple of big weekends in a row for the Pacific nations, and hopefully, some big crowds.
Very nice. Footy doesn't stop. Thank you again, gentlemen, for your time, and we'll catch you after the grand final.